Hello everyone, this is Nu-Trix, the synth guy, and today we're talking about mastering music on the iPad. In this case, we're going to talk most specifically of Grand Finale 2. I have Grand Finale 1, and I did a video that should be somewhere here that I talk about mastering on the iPad. I can do a whole video about explaining why mastering is useful and why you need to do it. The simplest answer would be to say that mastering is needed to optimize your mix to a specific distribution format. It could be for radio, TV, CD, online distribution, streaming. It could be for clubs. The logic of master is to have a mix that will translate as much as possible the way you wanted it to the most playback situation as possible. It will not sound exactly the same because no two rooms are the same, no two headphones are exactly the same, no two cars, clubs, whatever it is, they're not the same, but you want it to translate in a way that it gives you the same experience, musically speaking. So that's kind of why mastering exists today. I did a video about mastering with the iPad just because you could, and I was really happy about the fact that there were tools for the iPad. But honestly, I stopped using these dedicated tools in the past because I found it easier in my workflow, and I'll explain my workflow, and using the software where I mix to do my mastering. But still, it wasn't always using dedicated optimized plugins or tools to really do the master. Grand Finale 2 now comes up with the solution for me. It is now fitting exactly inside the workflow that I have. So let's actually talk about the new things of Grand Finale and how it's different than the one before. And even if you never used Grand Finale or any mastering plugins before, what this one does. Okay, so let's actually dive in. Just so you know, this is Grand Finale 1, and this is Grand Finale 2. So not exactly the same interface, which is exactly what I'm looking for, because one, everything's there, but it's kind of hard to understand the workflow and all that stuff. If you look at this one, it's basically the same logic. You've got the same input here with the filter, and I think they haven't changed, or they really changed a little only, the DSP itself. So most of the new features of Grand Finale 2 is the interface. It's a lot easier to understand where you are and what you're doing. Plus, actually there's three things. Plus the master out information. You get a LUFS, which is exactly what you want to have today when you're doing mastering. You want a loudness unit information. You need that. If not, you're going to do errors. And this whole thing is a audio unit plugin. So, of course, it works as a standalone, but where it actually shines the most is when you use it inside your DAW. And I explain why. Some people believe it shouldn't be, but in my case, it's exactly where I want it to be. So the interface itself is very logical now. You see the different section, you see the signal input. So anything you want to put in, actually, let's put it into context so we'll hear it as we talk about it. Think about the fact that you could use this plugin, yes, on the master out as a mastering plugin, but you could also use it as a buzz compressor. You could also use it just for the drums. It becomes just a different way to treat your sound without being for mastering. So just see it as a suite of effects, like a channel strip effects if you want to. Let's actually go to the mastering here, main track. You get Grand Finale here. Okay, so what do we see? We see the signal input. So what do we have? We have the signal input here. So you have the filter. So this is basically to filter out the low frequencies. Depending on the style of music and the way you approach it, everybody is sure to say you should cut everything under a limit. So under 20 hertz, that's the minimum, because the digital system we're using to distribute music should not be able to play under 20 hertz. They're not analog, they're digital. And because of that, if you send stuff under 20 hertz, sometimes it's going to make problems. If they're too loud, it could saturate the signal, it could create other type of artifacts. So let's cut everything under 20. If you don't have a lot of information under 35 or 70, you can also cut that. So this would be more acoustical or different. So I would say 20, it's kind of the must, or the 35. Some people say off. I don't want to cut anything. I would go against it, depending on, everybody today are distributing on a digital format, so you need at least to cut to 20. That's kind of the minimum you should be able to do. The other one here is actually presets. When you select these presets, it changes everything. You see everything else on the screen will change depending on the style and presets. And this is really cool. Right now we have something for the master, but you can also, like I said earlier, if you use this as a bus compressor, you get preset for that. If you use it just for the drums, just for the vocal, just for the bass, you have the signal input. You've got, of course, the volume here. So how you're gonna, if you double tap, it's gonna go back to 0. You have the compressor. So that's kind of a general compressor you can use. You can go, of course, let's actually press this. No compression, maximum compression. By default, you get gentle compression, you get hard compression. You hear the difference right away. Or default, so medium, low, and high compression. So this is a very global one. So you might want to have some of it. It depends on how low your mix is. You have the multiband compressor. Actually, let's go back to the whole. Let's watch the whole thing before, because, like I said, it might be too low. Well, then how do you know it's too low? Well, first of all, you've got just under the grand finale here. You have this VU meter that shows you stuff. If you bring it louder, it will actually follow it. And if you have this little red light here, you're saturating. And if you have the input here, red, you're saturating. So, but what you want to really see or look at before deciding if your volume is too low or too high is the master out information. You got the RMS, which is an average signal, if you want. That is something that we saw most in meters before in the past. You can reset them by clicking on it. And the LUFS, loudness unit full scale. That's a mouthful. Loudness unit full scale. And that one is actually pretty interesting. That's the one you want to follow, because everything in digital distribution today, so I say iTunes Music, YouTube, Spotify, anything that is online distribution uses that to manage volumes between songs. And this is really important. If you have a song that is mixed really loud but with no dynamics, it will actually perceive it as too loud, and it will bring it down compared to another one that is the same loudness but has dynamics, so there's some volume going up and down. So loudness unit is an average. I don't know with this one here if it's an average, continuous average, meaning if you play like a 5-minute song, it will actually average out the whole 5 minutes. It should be something like that. So you should reset this every time you press play. So it will start again and measuring, and as you play it. So you might have passages in your song where it becomes louder, or you have some sounds that are too loud. And this is something it could be really interesting. Let's say a lot of people mix with too much kick because they don't have enough bass at home, so they just put much more kick than they should. And you would see that little graphic here goes from minus 14 to -7 right away, because it would say, well, the average means that every time the kicks comes in, it's too loud compared to the rest. So this is one place you should look at. Like, you see, I could actually compress. If I don't compress anything and I reset it, it's on -19. So I'm actually a lot softer. So I could go halfway just to bring it. I'm having right now about 3 dBs higher, just soft compression. Then you get the multiband compressor. Now this one is interesting because you can compress different part of the frequencies section if you want. You can turn them off separately. So you can say, I just want to compress. And then this becomes an EQ. If you do this, this is useful to listen to what you're doing. To see, so you have to come here and you can decide how much you're going to compress that section, how much you're going to boost it. So you get the gain at the output and you get the compression. And then you can turn it off. And again, you get presets for this. A tighter bass. But these are not changing this. Now, I don't know if I'm having a bug because I'm using iPad OS 16. Yeah, that's kind of what I do. I'm stupid this way. If you change here, you see the different, like medium master you get here, okay? But when I do it here, it doesn't change. My guess is there's something in the iPad OS 16. So now, you see, when I do this medium compressor, now I'm at -7. Reset. So it's a little bit too loud. Where should I be? Well, if you play on YouTube, if you play on iTunes, if you play on Amazon, most time what you see is something around -13 dB LUFS. So loudness unit full scale, -13. So, or -12. So if you're around that section, it means that they will play back your mix the way you have it at home. If you're louder than that, if you're at -10, for example, they will bring down the volume 2 dBs, like bringing down the volume. So it also brings down the presence of your signal because the sound will be lower. And when you compare it to other songs, it might sound lower than the others. So when you're in a playlist, your song will be softer than the others. So you want to hit that -12, -13 as much as possible so that it does not affect your volume when they play back, you know. It also means why you don't want to squash everything and makes it super loud like we had in the past, because then you don't have any dynamics. So you don't have if you don't have any dynamics, you're going to be -5, you know. You're going to be super loud all the time. So they're going to bring it down a bunch of dBs, and you're going to say, well, it sounds really soft. That's it. So you have the multiband compressor. Then you have the additive signal. Now, what's interesting is look at the orange arrow here. This arrow means that what comes in parallel to go into compression and multiband compression and the width and the equalizer, it also goes into the additive signal path. And then you can go back and mix back with the original signal. So if this one is not used, let's for now imagine it's not used. And we're going to go with just listening to the rest of it. So what we have is just the signal path, the compression, the multiband compressor, then it goes into the width. So you can play with the width to make it wider. So depending on the type of mix you have. And what's interesting is at the bottom here, you have these different, I would say, algorithms. You have widen all. So now the width affects all the frequencies, or just the top. So the other frequencies are back to their normal places, depending on where you mix them. But just the high frequencies are widened. And the other one is the center bass. So everything that is bass, basically it should be, my guess is it's going to be under 400. It's going to be middle, or 300, it's going to be in the middle, and everything else is going to be widened. Now, this is really interesting because if you have a stereo bass signal in your mix, it might be bizarre. It might create a lot of problem. And if you send bass to 2 speakers that are out of phase, you're gonna create weird stuff happening. And it's not cool when people play back that. They will find that the bass disappears and all that. So A lot of people have this notion that under a certain frequency, it has to be mono. So it's going to be, because bass is omnidirectional. It goes everywhere. So you don't hear where it comes from, but you hear the interaction of two bass are out of phase, and it's really bad. So having a mono bass is always a big plus in the mastering. So the center bass is probably one of the cool fix tools that you have in here, and then you can add some width to your mix so it becomes wider and nicer. Equalizer, these are just the basic stuff, you know, a little bit bass, a little bit treble. Again, you get 3 different type of algorithm to use for the equalizer. Do you want to use the acoustics, the ambient, or the default EQ? And the last one is basically the master out with the LUFS and the RMS information. And you also have a limiter, which is always something you want to have at the end. So then turn it off, but you don't want it off. You want it in because you can push it and still have a good sound. Now, this is what you have in the green main path, I would say. The other one is the additive signal path. So this is a parallel signal to your main signal. And if you want to hear what it does, you can just put it in solo, and then you have, so that's my solo signal. Turn it on, turn it on. You can have distortion, you can have just bass. If you feel that your mix doesn't have enough bass, you can have more by editing the bass by itself. So you can just distort the bass, bring some compression to it, and add it back to the signal. And then this fast compression, there's fast 2. So you just pick the one that sounds the best, send it back. Distortion, again, you get the low mids, you get the high mids. Sparkle, this is the high frequencies. Again, this is, of course, I can use it to create sounds with it, just texture and what I want, but also think of it that this is made to enhance your mix. So if your mix is muffled or a little bit too shy and you want to have some brightness to it, well, sparkle, the high frequencies, that's what it's going to do, is going to bring distortion, but not distortion so it's like heavy distortion, but it's going to create movement and excitement in the signal itself. And it's going to be just the high frequencies. Extreme, of course, is going to be extreme, mid-high and low mid and bass. So you can really decide where it's going to affect it and then compress it and bring it back into the mix with the rest of it. So when you bring it back, you have... In this case, I don't need to use my compressor because I'm already at minus 12, 11. I'm good. I'm at the right volume. Now, one thing really important, when I talked about it in the beginning, I said that this now fits the way I work. So the real question is, why would I want to have this inside my DAW? Normally, you would do your mix, change your hat, and then do the mastering. It would be 2 different person. But as I'm doing it myself, and I'm still wearing my producer, creator hat, when I do the mastering, sometimes I go, well, I could change this. I shouldn't do that, I know. But mostly what happens is that when I start mastering, sometimes I hear errors because I don't have the right room. I just have a room. It's not acoustically treated. I could do another video just on acoustics on the room if you want, one point. Put that below if you want to have that. But the notion is that by putting it into my master track, my main track of my mixer, it's possible for me to start doing my mix without using any of these things. I just turn on the LUFS, see what's happening. Okay, I'm okay. I'm already starting to have the right volume type of. But when I start doing the mastering, if I found that my bass is too low or too loud, instead of trying to fix it inside the compressor that is here, I'll try to go back and fix it in the mix, because I'm probably going to have more control over there, because I'm right at the original signal, either even the bass itself. I can even go into the synthesis and change it. So because I'm a synth guy, so I prefer to go there. But then it's going to affect the master out also. So it's, for me, it's always an interaction. So I'm going to have to go back, change some stuff, go back here, see if it's better. Because I don't want to play with just a stereo mix, because I'm not mastering others people's stuff. I'm mastering my own stuff. And in that logic, I know that if I can go back to the original signal or the source or the track, I can probably do better than just fixing it. So that's why I prefer to have this in my song, so I don't have to go back and forth between two software. It's in the same, and I just go back between the tracks and the master. But the hardest part is to say is stop going back to the tracks and just finish the song. So that's it. I'm really happy that Grand Finale has now. I'm just not just that. I think this is the only one that does mastering that is a audio unit plugin. So I'm really happy about Grand Finale 2. That's it. Hope it's useful. Stay safe, make more music, and see you soon.